This was the Mary Celeste, one of the most infamous vessels in history. What happened to the captain, his family, and the 7 other crewmen on board remains a mystery.
A captain vanished, a ship intact. For over 150 years, the Mary Celeste drifted through myth, her crew erased without explanation.
The sails were damaged, those that were up and had not been furled were damaged. Aside from that, there was no real structural damage to the boat.
But now, modern science has not only uncovered what truly happened, it's exposed a terrifying chain of cause and reaction, more human and more heartbreaking than anyone ever imagined. The ghost ship Discovery. On December 4th, 1872, the British merchant ship Dei Gratia was sailing west of the Azores when her crew spotted a vessel drifting strangely under partial sail. She moved without clear direction, not in distress, but oddly lifeless. As they drew near, the ship's name came into view: Mary Celeste. Captain David Morehouse, an experienced mariner and a friend of the Mary Celeste's own captain, Benjamin Briggs, was immediately concerned. The ship was overdue to arrive in Genoa, and the sight of her abandoned in open waters was deeply unsettling. He sent a boarding party to investigate. What they found would launch a century and a half of speculation. The Mary Celeste was entirely seaworthy. Her hull was intact, and there were no signs of collision, piracy, or weather damage. The sails were worn but functional, the galley fully stocked, and personal belongings, including pipes, clothing, and a sewing machine, were untouched. Even a child's toys remained scattered in the captain's cabin. But there was no one aboard, not a single crew member. No signs of struggle, no broken furniture, no blood, and no evidence of a hasty escape. The only thing missing was the ship's lifeboat, which had been carefully lowered rather than cut away in panic. Her cargo, 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol, was mostly intact, though a few barrels showed signs of leakage. The ship's last log entry had been written 10 days earlier, placing her near the Azores. The weather at that time was calm. There had been no distress call, no storm reported, and no other ships in the vicinity. The ghostly scene confounded investigators and seafarers alike. How could such an experienced captain simply vanish with his entire crew, mid-voyage, without leaving a trace? It was the beginning of one of history's most enduring maritime mysteries: the people who vanished. The Mary Celeste was more than a merchant brig drifting through salt air and legend. It was home to 10 souls who were never seen again. Understanding their disappearance means remembering who they were, not just how they vanished. At the helm stood Captain Benjamin Briggs, a respected mariner from Massachusetts with over a decade of sailing experience. By temperament, he was methodical and deeply religious, the kind of captain who prayed over his logbook and ran a tight but humane ship. This journey was meant to be routine. Briggs was delivering alcohol to Italy. Confident in the ship's condition and cargo, he brought along his wife, Sarah, and their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia. Sarah Briggs had sailed with her husband before. She was calm, composed, and used to the rhythm of life at sea. On board, children's toys were later found in the captain's quarters: a tea set, a small doll, haunting reminders of a family voyage that never reached shore. The crew included 7 others, handpicked for their character and competence. First mate Albert Richardson had sailed with Briggs previously and was known for his steady hand. The second mate, steward, and 4 German deckhands were all experienced and trusted. There were no signs of tension among the crew, no reports of poor morale, no unresolved disputes. Letters sent before departure spoke of excitement and faith in a smooth voyage. So when the Mary Celeste was found empty, it wasn't just the absence of people that chilled observers. It was the total absence of reason. A century of wrong answers. For decades after the Mary Celeste was found adrift, theories swirled like storm winds across maritime journals, taverns, and tabloids. The crew hadn't been lost to a hurricane, a mutiny, or an obvious crime. That silence left a vacuum, and into it rushed imagination. The earliest explanation was piracy. But pirates don't leave gold chains, valuable cargo, and untouched barrels behind. The ship's cargo was still there, the galley stocked, and not a single trace of violence was found on board. Next came whispers of mutiny. Perhaps the crew had turned on Captain Briggs, abandoned ship. and escape justice. Yet, there were no bloodstains, no weapons missing, and nothing to suggest a struggle had taken place. And why would mutineers leave in a single lifeboat and disappear forever? Then came the stranger ideas: rogue waves, sea monsters, even alien abductions. A popular 20th century writer blamed an iceberg, ignoring that the ship was 400 miles south of any plausible drift path. Some pointed to the Bermuda Triangle, despite the Mary Celeste being nowhere near it. The sheer absurdity of the theories only made the case more legendary. Every year, new documentaries, fiction novels, and speculative pieces resurrected the ghost ship mythos. Each tried to solve a problem that lacked the kind of evidence cold cases depend on. And yet, through all the noise, one element had been present from the beginning, sealed in wood, evaporating into air, and hiding in plain sight. 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol. The science of an invisible explosion. In 2006, Dr. Andrea Sella, a chemist at University College London, proposed something radical: that the crew of the Mary Celeste hadn't vanished due to crime or chaos, but fled in fear after a chemical reaction none of them could have understood. To test this, he constructed a scale model of the ship's cargo hold and simulated the buildup of alcohol vapor using butane gas. When ignited, the gas produced a sudden explosion, not a fiery blast, but a pressure wave. There was a loud bang, a rush of air, and violent movement. Yet no fire, no soot, no scorch marks. Even the paper model representing the barrels remained intact. This kind of pressure wave explosion occurs when flammable vapors ignite in a confined space. It's loud and terrifying, but often leaves no burn damage. It matched what was found on the Mary Celeste: open hatches, no fire, and untouched barrels showing signs of leakage. For the first time, a scientific hypothesis aligned with every known clue. But in 2015, a separate team of chemical engineers at the Technical University of Denmark took the concept even further. They published a study on cool flame combustion in ethanol vapor environments, showing that under certain conditions, such as below 200 degrees Celsius and triggered by something as mundane as static discharge or friction from wood-on-wood contact, these reactions could produce pressure waves powerful enough to slam open doors, shake structures, and terrify anyone on board, all without flame or residue. This added a new layer of plausibility. The cargo in Mary Celeste's hold, industrial alcohol stored in wooden barrels, would have been precisely the kind of setup to allow for this type of chemical event. Combined with natural ship movement, friction between boards, and the dry Atlantic air, the conditions were quietly aligning for disaster. The crew wouldn't have seen fire, but they would have heard a thunderclap and felt the deck tremble. With no knowledge of what had caused it, or whether another explosion was imminent, Captain Briggs may have ordered an emergency evacuation, believing they'd return once the danger passed. They never did. The 2025 lifeboat discovery. For 150 years, no physical trace of the Mary Celeste's crew was ever found, until an academic expedition in early 2025 changed everything. A team from the University of Southampton, led by marine archaeologist Dr. Emma Thompson, was scanning the Atlantic seabed near the Azores when sonar detected an anomaly 300 meters down, a small, partially buried wooden craft. When they deployed an underwater drone for closer inspection, the grainy footage revealed what looked like a 19th century yawl. It matched the lifeboat that had vanished from the Mary Celeste. Initial analysis showed the structure had held together remarkably well in the cold and silt-covered depths. More startling was the chemical analysis. Alcohol residue embedded in the timber, an identical chemical profile to the industrial alcohol once stored in the Mary Celeste's hold. Further forensic examination revealed bone fragments, traces of tooth enamel, and organic fibers hidden deep in the wooden crevices. Using mitochondrial DNA and publicly available genealogical databases, researchers made a quiet but stunning breakthrough. Some samples appeared to match known descendants of the Mary Celeste's crew. No names were released, no formal declarations were made. But within the forensic community, the consensus was strong. This was the final resting place of at least part of the missing crew. The lifeboat contained no food, no navigation tools, and no protective gear, only the outline of desperation. The wood showed signs of damage from wave impact, and the position of the remains suggested death by exposure. But it wasn't the cold that shocked historians. It was the clarity. The find offered the first direct physical link to a decision made in panic, and the real human cost of a misunderstood chemical event. The ghost ship finally had a voice, and it came from below. The final decision and its consequences. In those final moments aboard the Mary Celeste, Captain Briggs likely faced a terrifying calculation. A thunderous pressure wave explosion had just shaken the ship. There was no fire, but the shock would have sounded like the start of a catastrophe. With a cargo hold full of alcohol, a second, deadlier blast may have felt imminent. With his wife and young daughter on board, hesitation wasn't an option. He may have ordered the crew into the lifeboat, believing they could temporarily evacuate, wait for the danger to pass, then return. The lifeboat was lowered cleanly, no signs of panic, just urgency. But the ocean is not forgiving. A gust of wind, a snapped tow line, or a misjudged distance may have carried them away before they could tether back. Without sails, compass, or supplies, they were set adrift. The weather had been calm, but cold exposure comes swiftly in open water. The 2025 discovery revealed their fate. No mutiny, no monsters, just a human decision made under extraordinary stress. The explosion didn't kill them, fear did. And that fear, shaped by sound, science, and circumstance, finally explains why they vanished from a ship that never sank. The Mary Celeste was never haunted by ghosts, only by silence and fear. Now, science has filled in the void with clarity, not myth. If you found this story as haunting as we did, share your thoughts below. Subscribe for more true history investigations, and let's keep unraveling the past, one mystery at a time.